What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Axel's Analysis. As always, I'm the man too cheap to make up his own name, so that's still one Axel Mulligan. Just reviewing this week's post Takeover NXT show. As I said before, if you've not seen Takeover, and I know there's a few people who haven't seen it, you need to go out your way to watch it because it was a brilliant show. This week, as I say, is the post Takeover show. Commentators Regal, Saxton, and Phillips. And I've just got no complaints about these guys at all. They always deliver on the show. As I said last week, in my opinion, they're the best team, best commentary team going at the moment. I prefer them over the main WWE team. Obviously, Michael Cole, JBL, and Jerry Lawler. I just can't fault these guys at all. Every week that they're on the show. You get like your little gripes and groans, like when Regal's on there with Renee Young, and I just don't like the flirting, as I've said before. But overall, I just can't fault these guys. Brilliant commentators, brilliant. Got great chemistry together, and that's what you need as a commentary team. You do need good chemistry between like the two or three or four people, or however many people are doing it. Because if you can't sort of work off of one another, then it's doomed basically. But these guys work really well together, as I've said before. They're the best team going at the moment. And as I said last week, I'd like to see them all moving up the ranks in the WWE. I know Phillips and Saxton do a little bit on the main roster for Superstars and main event. And I'd like to see Regal up there as well, because there's a lot of people very, very high on Regal as a commentator. So the sooner he moves up, the better, really. First match of the night. Mojo fucking Rawley versus Aiden English. I feel sorry for Aiden, to be honest with you, because he's a hell of a worker and he's left with this fucking useless lump. I don't need to keep going on each week about my opinions of Mojo. He's talentless in the ring. He's awful. Let's face it, he's awful. Anybody who's seen him now knows. Aiden dominated like for the majority of the match, and then, as you can expect, Mojo got the sort of the late flurry towards the end. He won with the hyperdrive, and as you can expect, I just can't get behind the guy because he's just far too limited within his wrestling ability. Some people who know me quite well, they'll turn around and say, "Well, you're the biggest Ramones fan that I know." Well, yeah, I probably am the biggest Ramones fan that most people know. For those of you who don't know, the Ramones are very limited within their musical talents, but they fucking made it work. Mojo Rawley can't. He just can't work in a wrestling ring. I'm sorry, the guy's just fucking awful. He really is. He's not got one single move that impresses me. I've seen. As I said before, I've not missed an episode of NXT since it became the developmental show for the WWE, and I've not seen anything from Mojo Rawley that has impressed me. There's another former football player that they've got there, Baron Corbin, Baron Corbin's got the look. He can wrestle a bit. He's not by any means the finished product. But he's a hell of a lot more talented than what Mojo fucking Rawley is. So I'd like to see Baron Corbin put in that spot where Mojo is, to be honest with you. He's got the look, he can wrestle a bit. He's got a bit of presence about him. That's the only thing that Mojo's got. He's got a bit of presence, but I'm just not. No, it's one of those people I can never see winning me over as a fan. Period. End of. The guy's he's fucking shit, basically. Anyway, moving on. Segment 2 is a very short interview. Devin Taylor, and as I've said before, whenever Devin's on the show, it's my favourite part. Yeah. If anybody's like sort of seen like the little conversations I've had with her on Twitter and sort of wind me up about it a little bit, you'll know what I mean. She's absolutely stunning, Devin Taylor. She's a really good interview. She does a really good interview as well, to be fair to her. She asks good questions. She's got the right sort of voice for it, if that makes sense. Like you've got like your Gene Okerlunds of the past. Gene Okerlund had the right voice for it at that time, and Devin Taylor works well doing it in this era. obviously I could see her moving on to the main roster. Obviously not now, but in the not in the near future, maybe the next year or so. She's not as good as Renee Young. Give Renee Young her due. I don't like fucking Renee Young, but she does do a good interview. To be fair, it's just her commentary I don't like. But Devin Taylor, she's very good as well. To be fair to her, so. And as I said, I've sort of had brief conversations with her on Twitter, and she always comes across as very humble, which is a good thing, really, because obviously you don't want arrogance around the business. She basically mentioned to Natalya about the matches that her and Tyson Kidd had at TakeOver. Obviously, Natalya said, that they were very... Sorry, Devin said to Natalya that Tyson's quite upset about his defeat. Natalya basically just said that she'll always have his back, and she's proud of him for what he achieved last week. It was one of the best matches of... Well, I'd put it in my top 10 NXT matches of the year, easily. I think a lot of people would as well, so... Just a short little segment now. I think that they're sort of building towards something more between Natalya and Tyson on NXT, which is good, really, because as I said before, they're not really doing anything on the main roster. Saying that, I can't remember the last time I saw Tyson Kidd on the main roster. It must have been when he had his comeback. I think they had a match against Fandango and Summer Rae. I think that was probably 2 matches they had, and then I've not seen Tyson on the main roster since. No, so I'm hoping that they're going to build to something between the two. Just to give Tyson needs a bit more character, whereas Natalya's got this thing going on with Total Diva. She's regularly used on Raw or SmackDown or Main Event or Superstars or whatever it happens to be. But Tyson's not. He's never on the show. So if he's got something there in NXT to keep him ticking over for now, that's obviously only good. And then hopefully he can catch the eye of the the powers that be, people like Triple H, Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, people like that. So the next match was Bayley versus Charlotte, and Sasha Banks was back in Charlotte's corner for the match. Decent little match, to be fair. Bayley's a really good worker. Charlotte, as I said last week, she's won me over with that terrific match that she had with Natalya at TakeOver. The only real talking point of the match, though, was the return of Summer Rae to NXT, bringing back the 3 BFFs. Charlotte, she was slightly distracted when because Summer came out basically sort of midway through the match. Charlotte got sort of taken off guard a bit. It was sort of like she thought that she was the big dog in the yard without realising or sort of without remembering that Summer was still around. Obviously, she's been off filming the Marine 4, I believe. And she almost got caught with a roll-up. She kicked out the pin attempt and ended up, a few moments later, she had to bow down to the Queen on Bayley. Sasha Banks and Summer Rae got into the ring after the match. They all sort of had a little celebration to sort of, congratulate Charlotte. And then Summer started attacking Bayley. Sasha and Charlotte joined in. And it was a bit of a weird one, really, because Paige and Emma made the save, but obviously they've been used quite frequently on the main roster. I didn't quite understand why Paige is still being used in NXT. If she's the main roster Divas champion, I didn't understand why she moved back down to NXT. So, and as much as I can understand Emma being back down in NXT, because obviously, she's only got this crappy little sort of partnership going with Santino, and that's sort of fizzled out now, really, because they're not being used. Obviously, that shit feud with Fandango and Summer, and then Fandango and Layla. But now Paige being there didn't really make much sense to me. But hey ho, I don't think there's really any other divas. Well, maybe Alexa Bliss could have come out with Emma. I think that partnership would make more sense. I know, Emma and Paige are sort of very close friends. Off screen, but Paige being back down in NXT, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I thought she had a little promo at TakeOver last week, and I thought that was her way of saying goodbye, but apparently not. The next match of the night was Ty Dillinger and Jason Jordan against 2 sort of the proverbial local jobbers, Philippe Gouljar and Stuart Cumberland, and the commentators, they were absolutely fascinated by Gouljar's name. They kept saying Gouljar, and Regal especially, he absolutely loved it. The match just seemed to drag on for too long. It should have probably been about 3 or 4 minutes shorter than what it was, probably even longer than that, because it was a fairly long match. But it just dragged on too long for me. But the one good thing is that Dillinger and Jordan did look really good together as a team. They had good chemistry, frequent tags and double team moves, and they just seemed to work well for one another. I think they've only had like one previous TV match before this, but obviously they'd have been working together at the live events. No, I was quite impressed. I was quite impressed. Dillinger and Jordan won, as you can expect. Jordan used like an angle slam, but he's called it the Jordan slam, so probably something that TNA fans will accuse WWE of ripping off. Yeah, read into that what you will. But there was a lot of talk on the internet recently, like in the dirt sheets, about Dillinger and Jordan perhaps being the next contenders for the Ascension. And I think they're going to be down in NXT for a little while now, so it's probably a good move. And there's talk of the Ascension moving up to the main roster, so my only assumption would be that they would move Dillinger and Jordan into the space of tag team champions, which I'm all for because I like them as a team. And then you get the Ascension onto the main roster, maybe not to challenge the Usos or the Wyatts or Rybacks or whoever's champions at the time, maybe not challenge them straight away, but sort of build up like a slow, kind of like how Ryback was built up, but don't push them to the moon too quickly. Give them feed them crap on the main roster. I know I've been complaining about that over the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks, where they've only been beating jobbers on NXT, but that's because there are no tag teams in NXT. If you could get them kicking the crap out of Primo and Epica, Los Matadores, or 3MB, just kicking the crap out of teams that are main roster teams and are real tag teams, but it's not going to hurt them and it's going to help sort of build the Ascension up. But we'll see where they go with it. We'll see. I'm hoping that it happen over the summer because their reign as NXT Tag Team Champions is boring the fuck out of me, if I'm honest with you. So we'll see what they do with it. The next part of the show was Tyler Breeze. He had a promo, and I think it's the first in-ring promo that he's had. And he delivered brilliantly, I thought. He's got this new music video for his new entrance scene, which he did himself. And the whole time that he's talking, he's kept his phone camera facing him. And I thought it was really well done because he was sort of looking into the camera every so often, then looking up at the crowd, then looking into the camera, then looking up into the crowd. And the Titantron had the camera on it. It was like a 2 or 3 second delay, but it had the camera from Tyler Breeze's phone on the Tron. And I thought that was a really good sort of touch, to be honest. But no, he talked about his win over, and I quote, sort of quoting Michael Cole there, Seth Rogen's less good-looking brother, Sami Zayn. And I'm glad he said that because I've always thought that Sami Zayn looked like Seth Rogen. But yeah, he talked about his win last week at TakeOver, and he said that he gets his title shot whenever he wants it, and he's not going to sort of announce it to the world. I don't think it's going to be like a Money in the Bank kind of thing, but he's going to sort of, he said he's going to keep Adrian Neville on his toes. So that should be quite interesting to see where they go with that. I'm not sure if anything's planned for the next 3 weeks of tapings that they've got set up already, but I'm interested because I think that Breeze and Neville could have a fantastic match. Breeze has won over a lot of people in the WWE recently with his, especially with the match that he had last week. So this promo, I thought he delivered it like inch perfect, to be honest. So that's only going to help him moving forward as well. He presents his music video, and the song is called #Gorgeous, obviously because he thinks he's gorgeous. Shows this music video is actually sort of quite professionally done, really. I don't know if it's actually going to be used as some sort of music video. or if it was just for show. I'd imagine it is just for show. But they showed the video. He broke down into tears, and the weird thing is that Tyler Breeze, despite being a heel, he's always been quite over with the crowd, but the crowd didn't seem to like it very much, which was quite odd, really. So not too sure. Maybe they're sort of like going off of Breeze a bit because he beat Sammy. Obviously, Sammy's always been a crowd favourite, so maybe they've gone off of Breeze a little bit. But no, I've always been a fan of Breeze, to be honest with you. I think even when he was like the Mike Dalton gimmick, I always thought they needed to give him something because he always had that little bit of talent that just needed that little extra push, and Takeover was that little extra push for him. So no, I'm actually quite pleased to see like a guy that you wouldn't normally expect to see in that spot getting into that spot. Kind of like how CM Punk did it in 2011. You've never seen one of those kinds of guys given that sort of mic time, given all the championship matches and the 434-day title reign. So I'm glad that Breeze is in that sort of position now. Really, it's only good for him, and he's a brilliant worker as well. So obviously it's good for the WWE that they're getting these guys into those positions. Main event was Justin Gabriel versus Adrian Neville. Gabriel had some new entrance music. It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad. It was just music. It was weird because it was promoted throughout the show. They have the little sort of flash up on the screen where they sort of say, the main event for tonight is going to be. But it's promoted throughout the show as a no disqualification title match. But Aiden didn't announce it as well, which I thought was quite strange, really. I know they did it a couple of years ago when Jericho fought Bray Wyatt, and they announced that throughout the show on these little captions saying if Jericho lost, he had to join the Wyatt family. But there was nothing. It was weird because there was no build up for that, and there was no build up for this to be a title match. So don't promote it as one when it's not. It's just fucking stupid. The highlight of the match for me was when Neville had Gabriel in a standing guillotine, sort of had his head hooked under his Gabriel's head hooked under his armpit, and he had like a grapevine around the waist, and Gabriel, he countered it brilliantly into a Northern Light suplex pinning combination. It's something that you've seen before, but for whatever reason, Gabriel and Neville just worked it perfectly for me. It was really well put together. I was really impressed with the match, to be honest with you. The crowd wasn't really all that into it, but I was really impressed with it. I think Justin Gabriel was probably one of the top 5 most underrated guys in the company. For me, he should be working in the tag division or the US title division on the main roster. How he's not, I know he had a title match against Cesaro, I think it was either last year or the year before, on a pay-per-view. But how he's not had a real real go at a title, not like a little, we'll give Justin Gabriel the title shot for this month. Why he's not had like a sustained feud on the main roster, aside from his Nexus days, I'll never know. It's like Tyson Kidd. He's one of the most underrated guys in the WWE. Neville picked up the win with a red arrow. Gabriel had this really bad swelling above his eye. Not sure where he picked it up, but fuck me, he must have taken a real sort of stiff kick or punch or something. It looked fucking nasty. So Neville picked up the win with the red arrow. Post-match, Tyson came out and apologised for his actions at TakeOver, and he asked Neville for a rematch. Neville accepted the apology and agreed to the rematch for the title as well. And maybe this is where we'll start to see like this new side of Tyson Kidd that I mentioned. Like he was heel, but face at the same time, if that makes sense, but not quite tweener. He's sort of, he had that aggression in his voice, which was good. I like that because it's always just been, Tyson Kidd's always just been emotionless, but he had this real expression in his voice that, he was gonna win this title match. I'm not too sure if it's like next week, week after, or whenever, even if it's been taped yet, I'm not sure. But he had this real emotion and expression in his voice. It's like, yeah, I'm going to beat you. I've done this before, I've done that before, and now I'm going to beat you. And Whereas before, a few weeks ago, I was saying that Tyson needed that bit in his promos to actually make you believe what he's saying. This was that bit that he needed. And I kind of thought, you might beat him actually, Tyson, because now you're starting to sort of come across as though you're believing in yourself, whereas before it was just, I'm going to beat you, all monotonal. But now he's got that real sort of venom in his promo, and I liked it. It was good. It was brilliant. So looking forward to that match, because the match last week was fantastic. It was one of the best matches of the year for me for NXT. So whenever that happens to be, I'm going to be sitting it and loving every minute. I can assure myself of that already. Decent overall show. I'm not sure whether I could have graded it a 6.5 or a 7. It was somewhere in between the two. I mean, that's only a fine margin to go by, but I don't know. It was missing something, but it still really impressed me because they've managed to fit a lot into the show without making it clustered. I think they only have 4 matches on the card, which worked well for me, but it was still missing something, and I'm not too sure what. I just couldn't put my finger on it. But overall, I enjoyed it. So, but there was nothing promoted for next week either, so I can't give you any details of what we can look forward to then. Well, this week I've not got any news. I just haven't had time to look around for any. Obviously, I sort of deliver a bit of NXT news each week. I've been sort of dealing with my brother and his wife have moved out from where we lived, so I've been dealing with that for most of the week, so I've not had a chance to look for the news, but I've got like the birthdays under this week in history. I'll go with the birthdays first. June the 2nd, Lex Luger turned 56. I don't normally do guys that haven't worked for the WWE, but I've put down AJ Styles. AJ Styles for me is one of the best wrestlers in the world, so I couldn't leave him out, to be honest with you. He's one of the best wrestlers on the indie circuit at the moment. I'm starting to get back into all the indie stuff, so I would say AJ turned 36. The 4th of June, Gorilla Monsoon would have turned 77. Well, I'm actually quite surprised by that. I thought he'd have been quite a bit older, but apparently it's only 77. And Mikey Whipwreck turned 41. June the 6th, Drew McIntyre turned 29. And today, June the 7th, would have been the birthday of the Grand Wizard, probably one of the best managers of all time. Turned 85, or would have turned 85. Superstar Billy Graham. Actually, this is one thing I did read this week about Billy Graham. He turned 71 on June the 7th, and 2 words for you, Billy Graham: fuck off. You don't want to watch WWE, don't fucking watch it, but don't sit there fucking pissing all over it, all over Facebook or Twitter or whatever you're fucking doing, because you're just a dickhead. Basically, Billy Graham turned around and he's complaining basically about the WWE product, saying about the gimmicks that they're using, how a midget's beating a real sized wrestler, as he called it. Fuck off, Billy Graham. You're the one who came out and you wanted a fucking karate gimmick after you had that really brilliant, inch perfect WWF title run. Why you want to go and shit on other people, I don't know. You've got nothing to sit there and fucking say to everybody, I don't like this, I don't like that. You wrestled as a fucking karate expert, inverted commas, and you look like a prick. Fuck off. That's my little rant for the day. Howard Finkel is 64 today. Mick Foley, 49. Tomorrow, June the 8th, Dan Severn, 60. I remember Dan Severn in, I don't think it must have been the late 90s. So you're talking, 15 years ago? I never would have guessed that he would have been in his 40s, and he probably looked 10 years younger. So, and then Tatanka as well, 49. This week in WWE history, June the 2nd, Dory Funk Sr. in 1973 passed away with heart failure. The first 3 are all deaths, unfortunately. It was the only sort of news for that particular day, June the 2nd. Dory Funk Sr. Passed away with heart failure at age 54. Dory Funk Sr. obviously being the father of Dory Funk Jr. and Terry Funk. 1998, the Junkyard Dog passed away. He was involved in a car crash, age 45. And 2003, Classy Freddie Blassie, again one of the all-time great wrestling managers. Freddie Blassie passed away, heart and kidney failure at the age of 85. June the 3rd, this is an episode of Raw in 2002. Stone Cold Steve Austin defeated the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. the story behind it was, I'm pretty sure it was this match. I've not done too much research on it, but I'm pretty sure it was the match where Austin was benched, again inverted commas, benched, and Flair gave him a chance to win his spot back on the roster, on the Raw roster. But he had to beat him in the main event of Raw, and he beat him, but it was all sort of pointless in the end because Austin ended up walking out of the company due to the creative differences, as he called it on his DVD. And that sort of sparked like a feud between Ric Flair and Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. And Flair ended up facing Guerrero at the King of the Ring pay-per-view. And I believe that the original plan was to have Austin to face Guerrero, which would have been a dream match for myself and quite a lot of other people as well, to be fair. I don't think we ever saw it as like a real promoted pay-per-view match, and that would have been the one. Obviously, everybody knows that Eddie Guerrero is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I'd put him in my top 10 any day. June the 4th, Billy and Chuck defeated Rico and Rikishi to regain the World Tag Team Championship on SmackDown in 2002. Something else I remember quite well actually as well. I was a big SmackDown fan back in sort of 2000, sort of between 2000 and 2006. Never missed an episode on a Saturday morning. Sky One. Rico and Rikishi were given a tag team title shot by Vince McMahon. Well, it was Rikishi and a partner of Vince McMahon's choosing. And it got to Judgment Day. Rikishi sort of comes down to the ring. Billy and Chuck are in the ring. And Tony Chimel announced Rico, who was the stylist, I think he was called, for Billy and Chuck at the time. And the match was made, and Rikishi, I believe he super kicked Rico in the face. And he landed on one of Billy and Chuck, and they won the tag titles, but they lost them back to Billy and Chuck sort of 2 or 3 weeks later, or whatever it was. June the 5th, 1987, Hulk Hogan retained the WWF World Heavyweight Championship in a match against the Honky Tonk Man in Chicago. This is me clutching at straws because I had nothing else for June the 5th. Didn't have anything for June the 6th. On this day, June the 7th in 2006, John Tenter, better known to us as Earthquake, passed away at the age of 42. It was only, I think it was like 15 days before his 43rd birthday. And he passed away. He had bladder cancer. Obviously quite a sad way to go. And in 1997, on June the 8th, Triple H won the King of the Ring tournament, defeating Mankind in the final. Obviously, I don't know how many people know this or not, but Triple H was due to win it the year before, but he had the famous curtain call at Madison Square Garden. Obviously, that spot went to Austin, and obviously Austin 316 sort of became a phenomenon. End of the show then. Make sure you look out for my 2 accounts on Twitter. You got at Axel Mulligan and at Axel's Analysis. The Axel Mulligan one is my personal one. The Axel Analysis one is the one that I'm going to start using for these shows. I'm trying to get more followers on there. I've probably got about 300 at the moment, but that one's at Axel's Analysis. The shout outs, we got Tim Vicious, well, usual shout outs. I've got a new one this week as well, actually. Tim Vicious, you can find him on Twitter at Tim Vicious or at Tim_Vicious. Tim's, I've said it a million times, like writing my blogs on these podcasts. Tim's one of the most educated fans that I know. He's done a bit of in-ring work himself. You know, he does his own show on YouTube called Vicious Rants. Always a pleasure to talk to him about anything to do with wrestling. He's, as I say, he's very well educated on the business. He knows more than what I'll ever know. I would have thought he grew up in the ECW period in Philadelphia. You bastard! I envy him for that. I tell him all the time I envy him for that. He's a really nice guy as well. So make sure you look out for him on Twitter. Sunday Segway podcast. You can find them at Sunday Segway. Kinney and Shugs every week do a fantastic show. Kinney's starting to get interviews lined up. He's had Brian Kendrick recently. He had the Alpha Female last week. He had a British independent female wrestler called Jezebeth a few weeks ago as well. So Kenny's working his ass off for that podcast. Make sure you give them a listen. You can find them on YouTube, iTunes, Podomatic, and I always say it every week. There's more places where you can find it as well. I just can never remember where they are. And don't forget to look at it as well for they're having the Beat the Clock Trivia Challenge in a few weeks' time. I think that begins, and it's something I'm going to be a part of, and something I'm really looking forward to. And Kenny, I've been working on my Fandango impression, man. You went and like moved the goalpost. We're doing Paul Heyman now, so we have to work on my Paul Heyman impression. James Powers 33. James is he does his own YouTube show as well. James's Wrestling Ramble. Another really well educated fan. He's, as I say, he got his own show. He's starting to get more guests on there now. He's trying to get myself on there. But next week onwards, James, I'm free. So give me a shout if you want me on there at all, anytime. I know we've talked about it a little bit recently. So, but yeah, James is he reviews each Raw and pay-per-views as well. So make sure you give his podcast a listen. He does a really good job as well. Pro Wrestling Smart Talk. Again, as I've said before, Nick's interviewed countless amounts of guys and girls from the wrestling world. Similar to what Kinney does in a way on the Sunday Segway. Nick's, he knows more than I'll ever know, more than I've ever known. Really good guy to talk to as well. Educated fan. All these guys that I always list, they're all educated fans. They really know what they're talking about, and that's why it's such a pleasure to talk to them all, really, because there's a lot of people that I talk to on Twitter who just sort of either trolls or just they don't know shit about wrestling. And I don't mean this in a... I respect everybody's opinion. Don't get me wrong, I do respect everybody's opinion, but some people just come out with such shit. But these guys, you know, Tim, Kinney, Nick, James... all these guys, you know, they're always such a pleasure to talk to. They're always like very polite, very friendly people. But yeah, as I say, you can find Nick at PW Smart Talk on Twitter. He's also got a Facebook page for Pro Wrestling Smart Talk and a YouTube page as well, where you can find all of his interviews that he's done with all the guys and girls that I mentioned. Wrestling Rambles at Wrestling Rambles. That's the Twitter handle for the website wrestlingrambles.com. Their handle is wrestling without the G. As I've said before, they asked me to write for them some time ago. Really enjoyed what I did for them. I did a top 15 SmackDown moments. It was something I really enjoyed doing. It was well received as well by a lot of the community there and a lot of people on Twitter. So, and actually, I don't think I mentioned this before. My first one was actually promoted on Twitter by Kurt Angle. It was talking about his first his European title win back in 2000. And just funnily enough, it happened to be I wrote it the day that he was the anniversary of it, like the 14th anniversary, I think it was. So just pure coincidence that it happened like that. And somebody mentioned it to Kurt, and he retweeted it, and I said to him, "Oh, you know, I wrote this about it earlier," and I just completely didn't know that it was that same day. But Kurt read it and he promoted it for me, so that was quite humbling, really, because Kurt Angle, again, he's one of my top 10 wrestlers of all time. So. But yeah, Wrestling Rambles, if you look on their website, they've got all kinds of different blogs and views and opinions and votes and polls, and you name it, they got it, basically. There's some really good people over there. Just make sure you just give them a read. Really good stuff. I enjoy reading it. I sort of check back 2 or 3 times a week, and even though I'm not writing for them at the moment, I still go back and I have a look at what's going on over there. I really enjoy it. So anybody else who likes reading a good sort of educated wrestling blog, just give it a listen. Give it a read. Some really good stuff. The last one is a new one. Tony Walker, Tony_Walker on Twitter. Tony's he does his own show on YouTube. I think he does it on Podomatic as well. It's called the Wrestling Matters Podcast, and he does lots of like sort of previews and reviews of shows. Another one, he's a really good, really well educated fan. Fellow Seghead, and he's just a pleasure to talk to. You know, he knows his stuff about the business, and you know, he's just a really nice guy. You know, just as I say, all these people, just give him a follow on Twitter. Look for the things that they put out. yeah, so many, there's more as well. Many more sort of podcasts and stuff that I follow. Unfortunately, I don't get to listen to all of them, but these are the ones that I listen to each week without fail. So if ever you want like an educated opinion, and in the Segway's case, have a good laugh on a Sunday, just give them all a listen. It's really good stuff. That's the end of the show. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you again next week.